month, we've been highlighting mental health resources in agriculture as we spotlight National Suicide Prevention Month. Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas is leading an awareness campaign to bring attention to the struggles that farmers and ranchers are facing, not only in his home state, but of course all across the country. And he joins us now with an update. Senator, good to have you with us today. And I know you have been a champion for suicide prevention and awareness. Talk about a recent roundtable you had on that topic.
Well, Tammy, our farmers and ranchers are under more stress today than they've ever been. Perhaps the worst economic year that they've ever had. On top of that, we have drought. Inflation is just driving up the cost of doing business, the cost of diesel fuel, the cost of fertilizer as well. And farmers and ranchers have a 3.5 times higher suicide rate than any other profession. So I just want our farmers and ranchers to know that I'm there for them, that RFD-TV is here for them, that they can call 988 if they are having thoughts of taking their own life, and a behavioral health specialist is going to talk with them. That's 988. You can text 988 as well. And we want to make sure that they get the help. And by the way, be a good neighbor. You know, if you're a farmer, a rancher, if you're a loan officer at a bank, if you work at the co-op, you know who's under some stress. You know, ask them how they're doing. Ask them to go get a cup of coffee with you, and you could even call 988 with them.
Right, and being available and then also encouraging them when those signs first start, when you know the pressure is there. We and my family have actually experienced this. And so it's very much a personal issue for me. And so we want people to know that you can reach out. You can talk to somebody, and that's a sign of strength. Not weakness. Right. So talk about some of those resources.
Yeah, so I think first I want to be a good neighbor. Recognize maybe just for a second, what does that mean? How do you know if one of your friends or neighbors is having emotional problems? You know, maybe they're not sleeping well at night. Maybe they're very anxious. Maybe they're working on their will. Maybe they're increasing their life insurance. Maybe they're giving away things as well. Maybe they dropped out of church or going to the high school football games. So be a good neighbor. Reach out to them. The resources, look, I think call 988 and they will plug you into the local behavioral health specialist as well. I know back home the Kansas State Extension has programs, but get them into their primary care doctor, and then they'll get plugged in to whether it's the local behavioral specialist or the community health centers.
Right. Good advice. Good advice. And we'll give that number again here in just a little bit. And I am so glad that they have started that, just 988, and you don't have to memorize a long number. Right. So that is very helpful. Let's switch gears a little bit. Farm bill expires Saturday. I mean, we're there, we're here, but we don't have a budget yet for America. So bring us up to date on where we are with the Farm Bill and where it stands.
Well, Tammy, it's time to put farm back in the Farm Bill. Look, the food programs are going to compose at least 80% of this Farm Bill. They have mandatory spending, so they're taken care of. We want to bring that farm back in. Look, the backbone of every Farm Bill should be crop insurance and Title I funding. So we're wanting more funding for reference prices. It may get a little ugly in Washington for an ag committee here the next several months, but there are some extra monies that we need to put towards that Title I reference pricing as well. There's plenty of money for conservation set aside, and like I said, the nutrition programs. Listen, farmers only get about 5% of the Farm Bill. We need to put farm back in the Farm Bill.
Absolutely. You brought up a great point, talking about those reference prices and where we are. It's my understanding that the current Farm Bill, isn't it based on numbers and information from like 2012? We're in a different world now, aren't we?
Yeah, we talked about the stressors in agriculture and why that suicide rate is so high for farmers and ranchers. It's because the stress is real. I don't have to tell your listeners that you have an operation loan, average operation loan in Kansas for a farm rancher, maybe $1 million. So you went from 2% to 9 and 10% interest on that operation loan. That was your entire profit. Of course, we're seeing diesel fuel prices go up, fertilizer prices going up as well. So that reference price needs to reflect the cost of doing business.
And let's talk about where we are budget-wise, because when do you think we'll see a budget pass, an appropriations bill pass, before you can actually really put pen to paper on the Farm Bill?
Well, that's a great question. I don't think that I truly have the answer. Look, the big picture here is our nation is $33 trillion in national debt. We're going to take in $5 trillion and spend $7 trillion this year, $700 billion of interest. When you're spending $700 billion in interest, there's hardly any money left for a farm bill or to pay our troops. So it's anyone's guess. I'm afraid we're headed towards a shutdown for a week or three, but time will tell.
Right. Talk about you specifically, because you've got such a big ag state right there in Kansas, and you've got cattle, you've got dairy, you've got row crops, you've got it all.
Yeah.
What have been some of your priorities that you want to see really there in the Farm Bill for you guys?
Well, look, first and foremost, 1, 2, and 3 is crop insurance, is to protect those, and we may need to raise how much you can cover with crop insurance. So I'd like to see the amount you can cover go up a little bit more reasonable prices as well. We've talked about the Title I funding. On the conservation side of things, we want to make sure it's conservation projects that we can do in agriculture in Kansas, and we can never talk enough about how important high-speed internet is to American agriculture, specifically precision agriculture.
Yes.
So much like building roads and bridges, our work with high-speed internet will never be done, but we got to keep improving that, and we have good bipartisan legislation to do just that.
All right. Well, we look forward to another update as well, because we're going to keep you here. We're going to visit because we've got so much more to go over. Senator Marshall, thank you so much for joining us, and we do appreciate everything you are doing on behalf of our farmers and ranchers.
Thanks, Tammy. 988.
Yeah, 988. Marshall joins us once again for an update on this legislation. And Senator, thank you for being with us, and so glad that we've got this act in place, or at least working toward that goal. Tell us what the EATS Act entails.
Well, like you just mentioned, Proposition 12 is an attack on state rights. That Proposition 12 wants to tell farmers and ranchers in Kansas, Iowa, Texas, across the nation how to grow sows, how to raise cattle, how to plant corn. They want to tell us eventually how to drill oil as well. So this is a pushback protecting our states' rights. I want to point out one quick thing, that Proposition 12 was led by animal activists. And one thing I'm begging your listeners to do is to get out there and tell our story, how much we care about the livestock that we're raising. I just did the state fair recently in Hutchinson, Kansas. There were young folks. They've been part of FFA, part of 4-H, showing their lambs, showing their cattle, their steers as well. We need to share that story of how compassionate we truly are with our livestock, and that we want to take good care of them as well.
And we do, and of course our ranchers and all the livestock producers have done a great job of that. We just need to do a better job of telling that story. I understand that on Capitol Hill there's actually been some opposition and a little bit of pushback to this.
You know, exactly. So these folks are saying that this is helping China. This our EATS Act actually pushes back against China. Proposition 12 would help the great big packing companies. As we all know, China dominates that market when they own one of the biggest pork packers in the world as well. So they can respond to all these rules and regulations. They can make a different set of rules for how they're going to raise sows to send to California versus sending them to the East Coast. They can respond as well. So there is some opposition. This is funded by the animal rights activists, and I need your listeners to help support the EATS Act.
Right. So contact your lawmaker, find out when the next vote's going to be. Let's talk about that. What's next steps for this bill?
Well, I think there's room in the Farm Bill for it. We talked about the Farm Bill in the last segment, so this is where we'll try to get it into, somehow slip it into that Farm Bill. So specifically, if you're a Congress member or senators on the Ag Committee, tell them that you're a farmer, a rancher, and you support the EATS Act, which allows Kansas farmers to grow sows, to raise sows the way Kansas farmers have done traditionally.
Right. Now, you also have mentioned that a priority of yours is the rural broadband access, making sure that everybody, no matter if you live in a small town, has access to high-speed internet. Talk about where we are with that and what you want to see in the Farm Bill with that access.
Right. So I'm proud of what we've done in the last Farm Bill of 2018. We've increased access. It's not perfect, but I think we've learned from some of our mistakes. We've worked with Peter Welch, a Democrat for Vermont, on making our legislation better. So we have a couple new prerequisites. We're going to spell out the speed that we need, but additionally, we want local providers to put that in. We don't want someone from out of state to come in and put in cheap infrastructure like this that doesn't really go to where it needs to go, doubling where it's already been as well. So I think those are a couple improvements. We got to keep working on the map. Some of the great big providers constantly say that they have service when we really don't. So, Kansas Farm Bureau, others are leading to make sure we get an accurate map where to put the new high-speed internet.
That is so important. Yeah, we've got to have that accurate map so that they know where it really does need to go. Because not only are we talking about access for internet and kids doing homework and things like that, but you're a doctor. Right. You know the importance now of living in small-town America and being able to access maybe a doctor online with telehealth, right?
Exactly. So telehealth is a big part of it. We talked about mental health the last segment, we can now do tele mental health visits while the person's on the tractor or the combine as well. Our emergency rooms in rural Kansas, of course, are hooked up through telemedicine with high-risk ER centers. Maybe they're hooked up. Someone in Australia reading our EKG or MRI at 3 o'clock in the morning as well. So very important, and especially this precision agriculture where we're downloading books, volumes of information, growing more with less.
And that helps a lot too. This kind of segues into kind of a labor issue, because when you're talking about when you can have some artificial intelligence, you can have some technology helping that farmer on the farm, maybe with a drone, maybe inside that tractor cab or combine cab, because we are still having some labor issues in the country, aren't we?
Major labor issues. Certainly the number one challenge, long-term challenge in Kansas is a lack of people for the jobs we have. We've been facing this for 20 or 30 years as well. So this precision agriculture, we have less labor, but we're going to grow more with less, drive down the cost of production, drive down the cost of our input prices.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I want to talk about the issue of foreign ag ownership. Some foreign countries, entities buying farmland in America. I understand you senators are coming together this week to have a discussion on that topic.
Yeah, right. So what we want to do is to raise agriculture to a level of national security, which it is. That if you show me a country that has to import food, and I'll show you a country that doesn't have national security. So we are concerned about the amount of purchasing from foreign governments, especially governments that are our adversaries now. Let's just face it right now that China is an adversary to the United States in so many ways. And it's not just to buying land, it's the whole vertical integration that we're worried about as well in the food processing. So China, again, like we said earlier, so much dominating the pork industry. I would sure hate to have them come in and start dominating the packing industry in whether it's beef or chickens.
Yeah, that's going to be a very important meeting. Keep us updated on that. Senator, thank you for stopping by. We appreciate it and everything that you do on the behalf of agriculture.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.